Welcome to UO Today. I'm Steve Shankman, Director of the Oregon Humanities Center. Our guest is Linda Brady, the Senior Vice President and Provost of the University of Oregon. Linda Brady's field is political science. She earned her AB at Douglas College, her MA at Rutgers, and her PhD at Ohio State. She came to the University of Oregon in June of 2006. Prior to her coming to Oregon, Linda Brady was the Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Science at North Carolina State. Before that, she was the chair of the Sam Nunn School of International Affairs at the Georgia Institute of Technology. She has taught at the U.S. Military Academy, and she also has served as an analyst for the U.S. Department of State and the Department of Defense. Linda Brady is a scholar in the field of international negotiations and arms control. She has published extensively in the field of American foreign policy. She is the author of the book, The Politics of Negotiation, America's Dealings with Allies, Adversaries, and Friends, published in 1991. She is now working on a book manuscript entitled Negotiating War's End, The Process and Politics of War Termination. It's great to have you here on the show and at the university. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Steve. I'm absolutely delighted to be in Oregon.
Well, good. The process and politics of war termination. When you started writing this book, did you have any idea that we would be involved in a prolonged war?
Well, I have to admit, Steve, that I actually started writing this book during the last Gulf War. But the burdens of administration have meant that it's taking me a little bit longer than I had anticipated. And unfortunately, in international politics, we seem to have continuing examples of wars. I've always believed that wars end most effectively in terms of the peace environment through negotiation. And that has been a continuing interest of mine over the years.
Mm-hmm. So how did you begin in political science? What drew you to that field?
What drew me to that field, actually, was my undergraduate advisor. I actually entered college as a pre-med student, took a political science course, which was required as part of my general education requirements, had an absolutely wonderful professor, Alan Wolfe, who took me under his wing and convinced me that my life should be devoted to political science.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that for our audience, that's, I think, a wonderful example and not atypical of what happens to students when they come to university. I also was a pre-med student when I came. Suddenly you'll meet somebody and then your life really will be changed.
I think that's absolutely true, and indeed my main goal in moving into academic administration was because of my commitment to ensure that we are providing the kind of education to undergraduates that they need to deal with the challenges that they certainly face in this century.
Now you've studied negotiating and arms control. Does it help you in your dealings with your colleagues in administration and elsewhere?
Well, it does not sound like negotiating with the Russians or the Saudis would be relevant to academic administration, but actually my experience in government has been extremely helpful to me. In the international environment, as you know, government-to-government relations occur in an environment in which nations are sovereign states. And the real power in the international system is the power of persuasion. And certainly that is the case in the university environment. Administrators don't really have power. What we do in the university is engage in intellectual discourse and in the formation of a consensus in trying to move issues forward. And so indeed my experience as a negotiator has been very helpful in the university environment.
And certainly with a university with the tradition of the University of Oregon of faculty governance, obviously consensus is a very important fact.
It's a very important fact, it's an important tradition, and indeed it's one of the characteristics of the university that convinced me that the University of Oregon would be a very good fit for me.
What other factors entered into your decision to make this change?
Well, I really am very much attracted by large public institutions with an emphasis on research and scholarship. But what is so distinctive about the University of Oregon is that it is small enough, it's of a human scale, if you will, to enable a very rich undergraduate experience as well. And so the combination of the high-powered research environment with the commitment that certainly our faculty have to undergraduate education was just very powerful. And I must admit, frankly, the opportunity to work with Dave Frohnmeyer. He is such a well-respected leader in higher education nationally, and it's a real privilege to be able to work with him.
Can you tell me what has surprised you the most so far, in a positive or not so positive sense since you came? I mean, you come and you have certain expectations. What are some of the things that have happened, or that things you didn't expect?
Well, actually, one of the things that I didn't expect is that I've been here for 4 months, and I don't think it's rained more than one day. I understand that's going to change soon, but I think the environment is just an absolutely marvelous one in terms of the setting, the opportunity to enjoy the environment. I've also been so impressed with the collegiality, with the open door policies. I've been able to move around the campus to interact with faculty and with staff, and that has been a wonderful experience for me. Indeed, one of the things that has surprised me in this environment relates to what has really surprised me coming into this environment relates in part to surprised me in a positive way, relates to the real love and commitment that faculty and staff have for this university. I've worked in a number of higher education institutions, and I have never been in an institution where faculty and staff have literally spent their entire careers because of their commitment. That's a tremendous resource for us.
Tell me about the vision thing. I mean, sometimes it's great to have a vision. Sometimes a vision can be sort of top down and not be responsive to the empirical evidence as it begins to emerge. So what is your vision? What was your vision, and how, even in the 4 months that you've been here, do you see that you need to alter, in a sense, what your preconceptions may have been?
Well, the most important role, I think, of a university provost is to ensure academic quality. I think that's a particularly important goal here. It's a goal in every public university these days because of concerns about the budget and public support for higher education. And so the focus on academic quality has been extremely important to me. That is an issue that has been in the forefront of conversations here in the university. It certainly has been one of the president's priorities. It was a priority of my predecessor. The University Senate has been very concerned about issues of academic quality. And so as I think about vision, my approach has always been to explore the culture of the institution, to work with faculty and staff, to assess their goals and objectives and their dreams for the university, and then from that to develop a vision or a concept around which we can all identify and move forward. And I think as I look at the university just in the first few months, one of the concepts that I think will be very helpful to us is addressing the issue of how we sustain the quality of education and research that have been a hallmark for the University of Oregon in the coming decades.
And so what are your ideas about, first of all, what are some of the threats to that? You say academic quality is something you want to enhance, and what are the threats to that, and what do you see as some of the ways to keep that academic quality strong?
I think one of the major threats that we face relates to the quality of our faculty and our ability in a very competitive job market to recruit and retain high-quality faculty across the disciplines. We do know at the University of Oregon that over the next decade, approximately 50% of our faculty will reach retirement age. And this is a national trend. And so as we're out in the marketplace trying to recruit the very best and brightest next generation of faculty, we're competing with other institutions. We have a serious problem at the university with respect to faculty salaries. The latest data from the Association of American Universities indicate that we fall below our peer institutions across every discipline in the university. Our goal is to gradually increase faculty salaries, but it's difficult to do that in the current budgetary environment. I will say that I was very pleased with the Oregon University System budget that was submitted to the governor, which calls for a 25% increase in the base budget, including an additional $29 million across the system in support of faculty salaries. So as a provost, and given the importance of faculty to the quality of the university, dealing with the recruitment and retention of faculty would indeed be my top priority.
So how do you do that in an environment when the university is so underfunded by the state? What ideas are being thought about?
Well, certainly faculty support is a major element of the Transforming Lives capital campaign. To date, the university has raised approximately $50 million to support faculty. And indeed, just recently, we have been able to create a fund for faculty excellence. Due to the generosity of an anonymous donor, we've been able to create a fund that will enable us to recognize and reward the very best faculty who may be at risk of recruitment by other institutions because their salaries are significantly lower. So the combination of additional support from the state with obviously private sector, alumni, and donor support will certainly help us in that regard.
How does one find more donors in a state like Oregon? You'd almost, if you were an outsider of the process, you'd think surely all the major donors have already been identified. What's the key to a successful campaign from that perspective?
Well, I think the key to a successful campaign is simply outreach and engagement with the community. Obviously, alumni form an important base of support for any campaign. But one of our goals at the University of Oregon is to strengthen our partnerships with corporations and certainly with foundations, both within the state of Oregon and nationally. And I think the notion of partnerships and the contribution that partnerships can make literally to the bottom line will be extremely important to us. We also are working very closely with the K-12 sector and also with colleges and universities in other parts of the world. And that helps us as well. It doesn't necessarily add to the bottom line, but it expands the opportunities that are available to our students and faculty, and thus enables us to enrich those experiences with the same dollar investment.
For our audience, and even for our faculty here, and people in Eugene, could you explain exactly what is a provost as opposed to what is a president? Give us a sense. I guess a provost, people say, is the chief academic officer of the university. Is that, you want to explain what that means? And maybe there's been obviously a lot more added to the job description than that.
That's correct. Indeed, if you read many earlier definitions of the word provost, the provost was traditionally viewed as the keeper of the jail. And some would argue that indeed in the role of chief academic officer, sometimes the provost is called upon to hold on to those keys. But in reality, the provost is, as the chief academic officer, expected to provide leadership to the faculty, to work with the faculty, to ensure that the academic mission of the university is sustained, to work specifically with the deans of the colleges and schools and department heads along with other administrators in central administration, to advance academic programs. The position at the University of Oregon is an expanded position, and so in my capacity as Senior Vice President, I'm also responsible for supporting areas related to student affairs, research and graduate studies, and finance and administration. And indeed, the ability to integrate supporting elements with the academic mission is a very attractive feature of the position here in the University of Oregon, and it is indeed somewhat unusual.
I was going to ask you about that, and you may not know this. Historically, in this institution, has that been the case, or was there a time when the provost was the provost and the other elements that you've been describing were done by somebody else?
I don't know the precise history, but it is my understanding that about 6 or 7 years ago, I believe, a decision was made to create an integrated position of Senior Vice President and Provost.
Now tell me why that is particularly attractive to you and advantageous for the university to combine those two.
Combine them.
Because I think people often feel that a provost, the way it used to be thought of, is the real fights for the faculty is the kind of the professor embodied, you know. And then you add these other elements which have to do maybe with fundraising and money, and then you maybe get a little corrupted by this environment. I'm just going to be very vulgar about it. So I'd like you to respond to that.
That's an absolutely fascinating question. I actually do believe that the integration of the roles of provost and senior vice president enable the provost as the chief academic officer, advocate for faculty and academic interests, to be more effective in the role of provost, because the reporting relationship is one in which elements that are absolutely critical to the academic mission, finance and administration, student affairs, research and graduate studies, indeed report through the senior vice president and provost. In other structures where the provost is indeed independent, very often it's difficult for the provost to be a very effective advocate for the interests of faculty in the academic mission, because in those organizations the provost has little influence over the allocation of resources.
Are you making this position of yours sort of known to faculty, or just sort of as it comes up? Do they ask you about this?
Actually, no one has asked me about it yet, but I think as I meet with faculty and department heads across the campus, I really emphasize the importance of the academic advocacy role for the provost, and the extent to which we're able to look at other elements of the university in terms of how they can help us sustain that academic quality.
Now, given your interest in political science and the international area, negotiations between sovereign states, arms control, tell me about how you see the University of Oregon's international priorities and involvement in the international scene.
Well, indeed, the enormous international reach of the University of Oregon was another factor that actually drew me to this institution. The university has had a long history of engagement abroad, particularly in Asia. And as you know, in recent years, President Frohnmayer has introduced an East Asia initiative. And that is not to suggest that the university will not continue to be involved in other parts of the world, but clearly, given our location on the Pacific Rim and our membership in the Association of Pacific Rim Universities, our future does reside in Asia. And I'm very excited about the opportunities that we have to build on existing relationships with universities in the Pacific.
So is this a difference in tone from places you've been at before in terms of the international, not that I want you to necessarily, or the region that you've been in before. Tell me what makes the University of Oregon different in this regard. Is it specifically Asia, or is it a commitment to the international arena as a whole?
I think it's a combination of the two. One of the distinctive characteristics of the University of Oregon that sets it apart from previous universities where I've worked is the large College of Arts and Sciences and the commitment to the liberal arts. And in general, universities that are grounded in the liberal arts tend by their nature to be international in their orientation. The real difference for me is that I have spent the entire academic career in the eastern part of the United States. And so the institutions that I've been associated with have been focused on Europe, simply because that set of relationships made the most sense. So for me, the University of Oregon is a place with a fundamental commitment to an international perspective, but also a university that is particularly well positioned with respect to Asia.
Now, you've been quoted as saying that the liberal arts discipline should address the needs of our society. Tell me what you mean by that statement.
Well, I have often referred to the engaged liberal arts as the opportunity that we have to communicate the value that the liberal arts have to the challenges that we face as a society. We certainly know that the study of philosophy and ethics is important for its own sake, but we also know that we face tremendous challenges as a society in the business world, in our public policy, and linkages between the liberal arts and the professional programs can be extremely helpful in the education of that next generation of students. A wonderful example of this at the University of Oregon is the relationship that has developed between faculty in philosophy, particularly in ethics, and faculty in the Lundquist College of Business, where they're working together to enrich the education of students in business. This is only one example, I think, of a range of areas in which the liberal arts are fundamental and are indeed particularly relevant to the challenges that we face today.
Another challenge we face today is diversity, the question of diversity.
Yes.
And so I guess you've arrived here and kind of in the middle of a new report and a new initiative to try to address this issue of diversity at the University of Oregon. So can you give our audience an idea of what diversity means?
Well, let me start with why a focus on diversity is important to us. If you look at the demographics, certainly within the state of Oregon, not unlike North Carolina, actually, the tremendous population growth that has occurred over the last decade and will continue is in the Latino Hispanic population. These students are now entering and progressing through K through 12 education in the state of Oregon. They are already beginning to enter the university environment. We need to be prepared, number one, to address the increasingly diverse environment that we know we will see on our campus, and also ensure that students at the university from groups that are not underrepresented have the advantage of being educated in the kind of diverse environment that they will certainly face in their lives and in the workplace. And so diversity is important because diversity is important for the kind of education that all of our students will need. Diversity is also extremely important in terms of the academic quality agenda. If we are a more diverse institution, that is, if we are more welcoming to underrepresented students and faculty, we indeed are going to be better able to compete for talent, talented students and talented faculty. And so from my perspective, the diversity agenda and the quality agenda intersect, and they're mutually reinforcing.
Now, I don't know whether some of the controversy surrounding the diversity initiative had begun probably before you arrived here. This is a campus in which faculty have, and I'm not necessarily talking about liberal and political sense, very liberal, very welcoming attitudes in general. Why has the initiative for diversity had some bumps along the road, given the obviously goodwill of the faculty and students in this regard?
Yeah, it's my sense that the faculty that I have spoken with, and I've spent a lot of time speaking with faculty in small groups, particularly about the diversity issue, which is very sensitive. I believe that our faculty, even those who have expressed concerns about the diversity plan, are indeed committed to diversity. I believe that there are multiple approaches to achieving the common goal of a diverse population of students and faculty and an environment in which all of our students and faculty can be successful. I do believe that this will be a very important year for us. The diversity plan simply establishes a set of principles, and in the coming academic year, faculty and staff across the university in their units will be developing diversity plans that will address the challenges that they face and their conception of diversity and the goals that they would like to establish for themselves. So while we do indeed have a diversity plan that has been approved by the university, we are indeed working very closely with faculty in schools, colleges, and other units to implement that plan in a way that takes into account their specific cultures and challenges.
So perhaps that was part of whatever the friction was. That is a kind of a top-down approach rather than working, in a sense, from the ground up. So this is an attempt to do both at the same time.
Well, and it is, and I do believe that in most of the issues that we face in a university environment, again, because of our traditions of intellectual discourse and shared governance, we need grassroots initiative. We also need central leadership. And again, I think that is the path to success. I do have to say, having recently been in a couple of other research universities, that the challenges and the debate surrounding diversity here is not unusual. All of our colleges and universities are trying to deal with these issues, and so the University of Oregon is certainly not unique in this regard.
So people shouldn't regard debate as necessarily a bad thing. It's, after all, a tradition of academic discourse.
Well, certainly not. That's what universities are all about.
Now, in the 50 seconds or so we have left, the university is going to open its Portland Center. Just tell us, if you wouldn't mind, just briefly about why that's important.
Well, I'm absolutely thrilled at the University of Oregon, Portland. We have been involved in Portland for many years, as you know. What the opening of the White Stag Block building in spring of 2008 will enable us to do is consolidate an array of activities in Portland, enhance our visibility there, provide a facility that will enable us to interact more effectively with the community, expand educational opportunities in Portland, and I'm very excited about this. I think it's a wonderful example of how the University of Oregon remains engaged with the citizens of the state.
Thank you very much, Linda, and you people in Portland, watch out for the Portland Center. We've been speaking with Linda Brady, the Senior Vice President and Provost of the University of Oregon. Thank you for watching.